I'm so excited to be here with you this morning. I want to thank you for visioning this possibility of there being another minister on the stage. I have to begin with just naming the journey that it's taken to get to this point, to celebrate it with you. It took planning and fundraising, and it took, before that, time to just imagine and vision together. And even before that, it took the courage to dream. On Mark's behalf, on your behalf as a congregation. So I just thank you and offer this opportunity to just kind of breathe and celebrate what you were able to make possible by visioning what a new day could look like. So congratulations. And congratulations to me! Yeah! Happy day! I thank you for dreaming, because your dreaming has made possible this lifelong call and dreaming of mine. When I told my family I'm applying for a position as a minister for social justice, they were like, well, of course you are. So this is just beyond, this is my dream. Since I went to college, I wanted to be a civil rights lawyer. I've just always wanted to contribute to the greater good, specifically in terms of social justice. So this, I found different ways to do it, but this feels like the fruition of many decades of aspiration. So thank you. Okay, moving on. I also thank you for inviting me to share and worship with you this morning. I know that it's no small thing to open your spiritual journeys into the care of yet another person in worship. An Episcopal priest that I'm fond of, Barbara Brown Taylor, she says that she stopped being a priest and she moved into academia. And when she did, and she re-entered the church as a person in the pews rather than behind the pulpit, she discovered how uncomfortable she was with someone else being in charge and responsible for giving voice to her holy journey, her love of life. That it reminded her that it's actually a very tender position to be in the pews or in the chairs, hoping that someone else will speak to what is of ultimate concern in your lives. So I thank you for the honor to welcome someone in to give voice, and think that a good place to begin then on such a day is to start to build that trust. Because, I often, as a minister in Reston in Virginia, I just thought, why do people not go to church when I'm not there? People would often skip out even if it was a pulpit swap and there was another minister. And I thought, don't you get tired of hearing me talk? Why wouldn't you want to hear a different voice? And then I found myself in the pews this last year, and I realized how hard it is actually, how much I thought, well, who are you and what are you going to say? Do I really want to let in what? So I understand that it's a great act of trust, that ministry is set, sermons and messages are set within the context of relationship. So what a way to begin this morning by sharing with you a little bit about my journey and my path that led me here. And the next time we talk, you'll share yours with me. Does that sound good? Okay. Honk, honk. Your dad's ready, kids. Let's go. I can't find my shoes. Well, where did you put them? Go check in the closet. The dreaded closet, the closet that's full of 5 kids worth of cleats and shoes and umbrellas and dog leashes and bags. Ugh. Stop talking, Erin, and hurry up. You're always late. Honk, honk. That was the weekly drill that the Gingriches went through on the way to Mass, to seek God's peace. So let's just pause for a moment of prayer here briefly for all those parents who wrangled their children this morning. Did some of you make it here? Yes, praise be, it's a miracle. Join me in a moment of prayer. Dear Lord, please protect and organize these children. that they may not get lost in the closet and be led asunder on their way to church. Amen. Amen? Amen. Scooch down the pew, the entire pew, and stop messing with your sister. Do you need to switch sides with your father? We believe in one holy Catholic and apostolic church. I didn't actually realize the word was apostolic until I was in seminary. But I liked church anyway. I loved passing the peace. I loved watching my family members reach out with people they didn't know and say, "Peace be with you." Particularly my older brother, when an older lady would reach out and take his hand, and to my surprise, he would actually say, "Peace be with you." Because if he took my hand, he would squeeze it until I went, "Ah!" And my mom would yell, "Knock it off over there." Singing one bread, one body, one Lord above. The sound of that song somehow would squeeze my heart till a little tear popped out of my eye, which I would quickly wipe away so no one in my family would know that I was moved by church. My father would place his big, warm hand on my shoulder, nudging me into the aisle for communion. My mother standing patiently in front of me, my younger brothers and sisters finally quiet in the pews, playing with crayons and picking their noses. But somehow, against all the odds, all 7 Gingriches would be quiet for just a moment. It may have just lasted a few seconds, but I tell you, it was precious. We were a different people. Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel writes that worship is a way of seeing the world in the light of God. And I'm not sure that that's actually what happened for people in my family, but I hope it happened for them on occasion. I hope it happens for all of us. That we get the chance to wake up here together and see the world in light of what connects us, of what is sacred about this crazy thing we call life. And I know that that happened for me in Mass, and it's shaped my life. I'm so grateful for that experience. It taught me at such a young age that we are part of something larger than just me or my family, that there was this life of the world happening that was worth paying attention to. In worship, the little things of our lives and the big things are placed within this narrative that reshapes and uncovers meaning for our own stories. Like the owl and the rabbit in the story, we can lift our gaze from our own parcel of land to notice that a larger garden exists between and among all of us. And even as a kid in church, I sensed this. Even if it only lasted for a handshake, I knew that I wasn't the same. As you can see, I eventually made my way out of the Catholic Church. As I got older, that experience, the internal experience of the peace in Mass was different from me than the message, the external message I sometimes heard. And I remember the last time I went to Mass as a Catholic. I was 18, I was in college, and I went and I sat there, and the priest was talking about abortion in a way that I just couldn't stand. It didn't resonate with my experience of the complexity of life. And I said to God in my head, this guy has 5 seconds to stop or I'm out of here. 5, 4, 3, he stopped. So I stayed, but I never went back to Mass as a Catholic. Instead, I found that I wanted a place where I could find peace, where the messages all related and intersected, where I didn't have to fight off and let go of different messages. And so for me, that was a place where there was no language. It was the woods. And one particular memory stands out. I was 23 years old. I was working at a rape crisis center, and it had been a very challenging week. So on Sunday, I decided to leave it all behind. And I drove down into Santa Cruz and sat on the beach. And you know those days where you're just so exhausted that really all you can do is just sit there. And it's amazing how long you can sit there. Like, impatience doesn't occur to you. You're just staring. Well, that was the kind of day that I had. And I nestled up into this rock, and I sat there. And I watched the sun move across its entire trajectory, which I'd never seen before. Well, from its zenith anyway, down past the ocean. And as I sat there watching this yellow and orange ball of fire move behind the waves, I realized I wasn't watching a sunset. I was actually watching where I sat on the earth rotate away from the sun. That I was sitting on a planet that was twirling in space. That was this embodied experience where learning occurred without any words, and belonging emerged. That's what I love about nature. That when I'm quiet and I slow down, nature speaks. It's like lessons that I have forgotten are recalled. And that connection is no longer just a thought. It's obvious reality. And when that can break through the chatty Cathy that isn't just my mouth, which you will come to discover, but is also my mind, that this world exists beyond my little slice, my data set of the world and my reactions to it, that this freedom of transcendence and just being appears. Living in San Jose, I had the opportunity for that on a regular basis. The grandeur of the natural world just called to me like this powerful magnet. On my way home from the Rape Crisis Center were these trails. They would just call to me, Erin, come and see us. And some days I would say, I'm just too busy, I have to go home. And on those days when I got home, I often regretted it, wondering what might I have heard? What sacred whisper would linger if I had just said yes? In the reading, David White wrote, "Enough. These few words are enough. If not these words, this breath, not this breath, this sitting here, this opening to the life we have refused again and again until now." I no longer felt comfortable refusing the life to which I belonged. Being open to the larger life of the world through nature showed me just how ineffective it was to seek refuge in my own thoughts. And I decided to move to a place where this was just part of the local culture, where life was slower and a day of meditation on the trail was commonplace. I moved to Vermont. And once there, I found a job working with youth at an alternative high school. And this was not your typical alternative high school. Many students were living in foster care or group homes. They'd been removed from violence and abuse at home. Many were experiencing the onset of mental illness. Regardless of their individual circumstances, as children transitioning into adulthood, they had to bear emotional challenges that many adults couldn't handle. Their lives weren't falling apart. They had fallen apart. And many were just inches away from incarceration. So my job was to be there with them, so that they didn't have to be broken alone. That was a hard job. That was a hard job. It was also incredibly satisfying to be able to bring love into that space and into their presence. Somehow, their stories called to me the same way that the trail did, that the sunset did. Slow down and really listen to this life that's happening all around you and in you. This is the life, all of this is the life to which you belong. Well, I was paying attention. The only problem is I didn't know what to do with what I was receiving. Surely, I thought, I can't be the only person in this world who finds life a bit overwhelming and confusing. My neighbors must also see the beauty of the mountains and the sunset in the distance, and yet in the foreground see the huddled masses on a cold February morning waiting for groceries at the food pantry across the street from our houses. And seeing such beauty and pain, I mean, it is cold in a February morning in Vermont. And seeing this beauty and this suffering all in the same moment was just overwhelming. I didn't know what to do with what life was telling me. I lived in a place where people go to vacation. It was amazing. It was breathtaking. And at the same time, my innocence about the goodness of life had also been shattered. I'd worked at a rape crisis center with youth on the brink at the alternative high school. Before that, I worked at a domestic violence agency in college and a homeless shelter for women and children. So at 23, I saw a lot of things that just tore my heart apart. While I was excited to finally be out adventuring in the world, I was also terrified about how awful life can be. How does a grown-up hold all of these revelations at the same time? I didn't know. I saw people just get up and go to the grocery store, and I thought, how do we go about this? And I didn't know, and I was losing my way. And as I grew aware of life's power, the fear in me grew. I don't remember which pill it is in the Matrix, but I wanted the one that kind of kept me in the Matrix. Maybe it's the red pill, I don't know, but there were parts of me, it's like I didn't really want, I wanted to refuse that. I didn't want to have to see that. I didn't want to have to integrate that hardness in life into my sense of wonder. Are you with me? Have you ever had that struggle? Like, I don't know, maybe this morning? Well, if you're human, then I know that you have. Because the Four Noble Truths of Buddhism they've been such a solace to me to know that I'm not the only one, actually. That for thousands of years, spiritual sages have said that life entails pain and loss. And that humans, man, we just don't accept that and we struggle against it, causing ourselves more suffering with our refusal. Which Kafka in our reading said basically the same thing. You can hold yourself back from the suffering of the world. That is something you are free to do, and it accords with your nature. But perhaps this very holding back is the one suffering you could avoid. Well, I wanted out of knowing that kind of pain, but at the same time, I didn't want to hold back from living a full life. So sick of being stuck, one morning I decided to take radical action, and I tried something a friend recommended that I thought was kind of ridiculous, actually. It's something we're all doing right now. I went to church. Weird, right? So weird. Well, it was the First Unitarian Universalist Society of Burlington, Vermont, and I didn't know what I would find there. And I didn't really think I would find what I was looking for. I had grown up in a church, and it didn't really seem relevant to the questions I was currently asking. But living was perplexing to me, and I was willing to try almost anything, even church. I'm so glad I did. I'll have you know that on that first Sunday back in church, I was early. Mother. It was a mistake. I read the sign wrong. But no matter, I was early, and it gave me the chance to read the pamphlets in the back and get a handle on just what I was getting myself into. And I will admit it freely this time that when it squeezed my heart and a tear came out, I was so relieved. There was a place, a faith community where people came together to celebrate life, to engage the mystery, to consider life's unanswerable questions, and then stay after worship and drink coffee together and talk more about it. As a child, we always left right after communion sometimes in church, but here people stayed because they enjoyed one another and they enjoyed engaging life's challenges together. People wanted to do more than just experience awe. They actually wanted to contribute to others' access to it, to remove obstacles in society and in the ways we treat one another and perpetuate life, that more people can just experience life's goodness. And it wasn't because it was a guilt-induced sense of obligation. People were passionate about contributing love to the world. People were fulfilled by it. My path to Unitarian Universalism may not be that different from some of yours. Like me, you may have felt something worthwhile and transcendent in church somewhere, but at some point, maybe like me, you grew weary of translating all the ideas to try to find something that fit. And once you found a UU church like me, you may have delighted in the fact that you resonated with the language of reverence spoken here. It's deeply nourishing when you have felt like an outsider. Yet, like me, fitting in may not have been enough for you either. Like me, you may have stayed not just because we no longer have to translate, and not just because church helps us remember we're part of something larger, but perhaps like me, you resonate with the lived faith, with the response in the world. That we appreciate how, with others, we're able to sustain this call to actually open to all of life. That together, we find the strength and collective resourcefulness to respond to that beauty and that pain that is all our life. The spiritual path is not just about hearing and noticing. It is also about this dance of giving and receiving love. To open ourselves, to allow that love for what connects us, to enter us, to grow in us, to challenge us, to beckon us, to find ways to respond and serve. Rabbi Heschel writes, "The beginning of faith is not a feeling for the mystery of living. The root is the question, what to do with the feeling for the mystery of living." And religion begins with a consciousness that something is asked of us. I suspect this is why many of us are here, that we share this consciousness that something is asked of us. Well, when I was 23, I wasn't sure how to respond, and guess what? I still don't. But I know without church and ritual, the influence of society, it's too easy for me to let the part of me that's concerned with my own parcel, like rabbit and owl, to take over. But with church and all of you, I find that my answers get better and broader in scope. That when life comes calling, together we can hold more of it. Are you with me? Yeah. Salvation happens, says the Episcopal priest Barbara Brown Taylor. Salvation happens every time someone with a key uses it to open the door he could lock instead. May we help each other engage life's tensions, not to break us down, but to break us open.